There was a cafe across the street from the Charterhouse Hotel. Kirkpatrick went in, asked for a coffee, and sat at a table near the window. He was a tall man, about 30, with long brown hair and blue eyes. He wore jeans, a jacket, a blue shirt, and light brown shoes. He read the papers from Shepherd. The South African story was short, and Van Delft's name was in it. It asked the question, does this man buy and sell blood diamonds? Kirkpatrick also learned a lot about Van Delft's business. It brought coffee, fruit, and other things from Africa to Europe, and then took cars and computers back to Africa. He waited in the cafe and thought about how to start a conversation with Van Delft. He didn't have time to think of an answer. Van Delft came out of the hotel, a black bag in his hand. Kirkpatrick drank his coffee and stood up. Van Delft turned right and started walking. Kirkpatrick took his jacket and went after him. He needed to talk to Van Delft, but how? Van Delft walked down to Holborn Circus and then turned right into Hatton Garden. Kirkpatrick was 50 meters behind. Hatton Garden is famous for its jeweler shops. There are all kinds of jewelry in the shop windows, watches, diamond rings, but Van Delft didn't stop to look at them. About 200 meters down the street, he opened a door and walked into a shop, Lafaume Jewelry, Paris, London, Antwerp. Kirkpatrick looked at his watch. It was 10:30. He walked up to Lafaume Jewelry and looked in through the window. The shop wasn't open now. Van Delft and a young woman were at the back of the shop. The young woman had long, dark hair. Van Delft's bag was in her hand. They went into a room and closed the door. Kirkpatrick walked down the street. He looked in the shop windows, but every 2 or 3 seconds he looked back at Lafaume Jewelry. No one came out. He thought again about how to start a conversation with Van Delft. He walked across the road and looked in some more shop windows. 15 minutes passed. Kirkpatrick looked at his watch again. Then the door of Lafaume Jewelry opened and Van Delft came out. He still had his black bag. Kirkpatrick didn't know what to say, but he felt the time was good. "Eric!" he shouted across the street. "Eric Van Delft!" Van Delft turned and looked at Kirkpatrick. There was a question on his face. Kirkpatrick walked across the street to him, a big smile on his face. "I saw you come out of that jeweler's," Kirkpatrick said, "and I knew it was you, man." Van Delft didn't say anything. "You remember me, don't you?" said Kirkpatrick, still smiling. "Lagos, Nigeria, 5 years ago. No, 6 maybe. We had some drinks together, you and I. We had a lot of drinks together." Kirkpatrick laughed and put his hand out. Van Delft took it and gave Kirkpatrick a small smile. "Harley," said Kirkpatrick. "Harley Kirkpatrick. You know, man, this is a good day for me, and maybe it can be good for you too. Are you still in the business?" Kirkpatrick stood very near to Van Delft. "You know, buying and selling? This and that?" He didn't wait for Van Delft's answer. He took a pen and paper out of his jacket, wrote a number, and gave it to Van Delft. "Here's my number, man. Call me. I know someone with good money, and he wants to buy." Van Delft looked at the paper and then at Kirkpatrick. "Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick," he said. "That's okay, man," said Kirkpatrick. "And it's Harley. Listen, I must go. It's good to see you again. Call me." Kirkpatrick turned and walked away. Van Delft stood there in front of Lafaume Jewelry and looked at the paper in his hand. Then he looked at Kirkpatrick and looked down at the paper again.